G'day and welcome to the increasingly warm Antipodes, where serving traditional cask ale presents some challenges. So here's my solution to dispensing cask ale using my beer engines. Coming up, details of how I converted my kegerator. The choice of the first ale to dispense was very much influenced by Richard of the Wheatlow Brewery and his recreation of the Hook Norton Old Hooky. There'll also be a quick tour of the Hook Norton Brewery circa 2004. Then I'll detail the version of Old Hooky and my brew day, and of course the all-important tasting. But first I need to mount the beer engines over the cellar. I used a sheet of 1200 by 596 millimeters by 18 mil thick plywood, and the old adage of measure twice and cut once was very applicable. One of the tricky bits was to work out where to put the hole to line up where the font had been installed on the kegerator. Next there was a trial fitting of the beer engines to check all the clearances, and for the engine on the right the pump mechanism moves, which proved quite tricky. I cut a slot to suit the CQ beer engine so it would sit further back into the mounting shelf, tried it for size and its pump action. The whole unit was stained and treated with polyurethane paint, and I'll come back to the fine adjustments later. I visited the classic Hook Norton Tower Brewery in 2004 and took the tour. They have a working steam engine with belts and pulleys all over the place. They have a very antique mill at the top of the tower and of course a steel masher. That's William Steele's patent, which commands the mash tun and mixes the malt and the liquor. The copper has an internal calandria to make a very ebullient boil. The hops were whole hops, and they have a hop back where they put the entire brew. When I visited, they were still using the cooler up in the roof, but were also using a counterflow chiller to cool the wort. They use open fermentation vessels, and as you can see, a very active yeast with a parachute to skim off the yeast and some very interesting monitoring of the fermentation progress. And finally, the beer's racked. Here's my version of the Hook Norton Old Hooky recipe, and thanks to Richard from the Wheatlow Brewery for providing the details. It's a fairly simple grist. Perhaps the most interesting thing was the Simpson's aromatic malt, which sometimes goes by the names of Dixon's enzymic malt. There's a very traditional hopping of Fuggles, East Cape Goldings and Challenger. I chose to use a Lallemand House ale dry yeast for this beer, not having the luxury of liquid yeast from the brewery. I chickened out with the water salts and didn't put as much calcium chloride as in Richard's recipe. Now for my brew day. I've sped this up a bit in places as I'm sure most of you understand the brewing processes. The fermentation was pretty much done in 72 hours. Now for the racking. This is where it becomes cask-ish. Again, I've sped up bits.
Right before I put it in the imitation cask. Fruity. (13°C). Much easier to see if you take a photograph of it. Come on. So it's 10-12 at 13°C. I added biofine clear in each of the oxybars and did a CO2 purge.
As you can see, there was a fair bit of fiddling about and a few leaks to be sorted out as well when filling the 8-litre oxybar. A very steady transfer, then another purge, and repeat for the 4-litre oxbar. There wasn't quite enough for another 4 litres, so some small bottles. Waste not, want not. Still a bit murky. Got a bit of yeast floating around in it. Well, not to be unexpected coming from the fermenter. Fruity. Very light carbonation, as you would expect. Very complex dry finish. It's going to be good once it's conditioned. Cheers. I didn't add any priming. So I solved the variability of the garage temperature ranging from 8 to 20 degrees over the day by putting the beer in the fermentation fridge at 20 degrees to condition, and hopefully that'll be good. Now I needed to finish off mounting the beer engines, and whilst I was cleaning, the base plate moved. It worked fine with no load. It was much better with the clamps installed. Be warned, you are now entering a sparkler-free zone. You can get a perfectly good head without. So I'm going to try this one that's been conditioned for a while. I'm just going to crack the top, a little hiss, put my dispensing thing in. Oops. And put that on the top. Put my vent on. Oh. And pop it back in here. It's looking nice. It's a very deep copper, slightly amber, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of bready malt. Have a taste. Probably could have done with another couple of days of conditioning, but it's got a really nice harmonious flavour with the caramel and the malt, the bready malt, and the finish is very complex. Cheers. Next, I installed my cask breather / aspirator to my CO2 line and heard hissing, not good. So I pulled the unit apart, gave it a good clean, reseated the gasket, added some lube, and then mounted it on the wall. Time for another pint. Let's try another pint after another 2 days of conditioning. Fruity. Cleared up a bit. And oh, that's much more like it. Cheers. Here we have the draught and the bottle side by side. No prizes for guessing which one was which. The tasting notes showed the bottled version had a pronounced caramel flavour and obviously more carbonation than the draught. The caramel in the bottled beer may be related to oxidation. Goodness knows how it travelled to Australia. The draught was not as bright as I would have expected using Biofine Clear. However, the beer was not stored at 4C as it needed to be conditioned, so the Biofine didn't work at 10 to 12C. Two extra special brewer club members compared the Old Hooky in bottle with my draught version. One commented the draught was like having a pint in an English pub. Praise indeed. For the next batch, I've decided to adopt a hybrid approach. So when it's a couple of points above final, I'm going to spoon at 12 psi and at 20 degrees C, and aiming for about 1.5 volumes of CO2, then gently drop to 4 degrees C. Transfer it to the oxybar, Biofine, let sit at 4C for a couple of days, move to the cellar, wait a day, and dispense. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Cheers.